All right, everybody, welcome back to the Identity Jedi show. This is the episode live from Vegas, Identiverse 2024. You guys know we love doing live podcasts, so we had to do it in Vegas. Samir, how you doing, man?
Good. I almost forgot it's 2024, man. I feel like time is just flying, right? I mean, we're already midway through the year, and we're Vegas Identiverse, and it's surreal to me because it's my first time.
Yeah, and this is your first Identiverse. So what do you think so far of the show?
I think it's much more manageable than the craziness of RSA.
Yeah,
where,
definitely,
definitely. That's one good thing. And the second thing is kind of nice because everyone's kind of around the Aria Hotel.
Yeah.
So you just run into people all the time, which I think is great.
Yeah. No, I love seeing how this conference has grown. I didn't realize until like last night I went to the speakers reception. Like this is the 15th year. Like that threw me. I was like, dang. And I've probably been to I think 8 or 9 at this point. So just to see how it's grown to where it is now, and CRA kind of stepping in the last 2 years. Like this year, you can definitely see like the investment behind it, right? Yeah. Like the stuff what they did with the expo hall. Like we were talking about when we got in to take some shots. Now they got like the nice little LED lighted sign, stuff like that. Like you start to see a little bit more staff from the Identiverse standpoint. So the conference is definitely growing up. But I always love the community feel to the conference, right? It's just all the practitioners here, everybody's here. It's a good time.
Well, I think that's a key point, right? I noticed the same thing you just mentioned, which is a lot of practitioners.
Yeah.
But RSA, I felt like everyone I was bumping into was a salesperson.
Yeah.
Which is like, wait, don't I want to meet some people who actually practice security?
Yeah.
But I was going to mention, I used to live in Denver, and I think Identiverse, Ping Identity, the CEO there, had started it, and I remember it being like really small.
Yeah.
And was it in Denver at the time? Do you remember?
The
first couple,
I think it was in Denver. When I started going, it was in Chicago. At the time, it was Cloud Identity Summit.
Got it. No, that
makes
sense.
So it started off as Cloud Identity Summit, and then it switched to Identiverse. Like, man, don't get me lying. I don't know, like 7 or 8 years ago somewhere. Like he switched to Identiverse. But no, it was always real small because it was this. Again, it was kind of like the Identities version of like a hacker group, right? Like we saw came and like nerded out about stuff together, right? And like when it was smaller, they used to like do family passes, so like people could bring their spouses and their family, and like it was just the whole thing to do. As it got bigger, right, it became more of like a conference. So we were kind of sad to see that option not come back. We thought it would, but I guess CRA was like, no. We want to milk as much money as we can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not everybody. Right?
Yeah, the pricing and everything has changed for sure.
Yeah, oh, definitely, definitely.
I got the email saying if you don't buy it before the end of the month, you're going to pay double. So they're putting that pressure on you, right? Like, if you don't buy it, you're going to pay a lot more money. Definitely more commercial.
Yeah, listen, I think we were doing this the other night at dinner, just kind of figuring out, like, looking at Identiverse and, like, how much they pull in these conferences, but, like the early bird pricing is like $8.95 for a ticket. I think the regular price, which I'm assuming very few people pay, is like $2,600 for a general admission ticket, right? So you get that range there. So it's
getting up there.
It's getting up there
for 2-3 days, 2.5, 3 days.
Yeah. It's getting
of content. That's what I meant.
Right. Yeah. 2-3 days of content. Speaking of content, have you had a chance to check out any of the sessions yet?
No, but I've actually been spending most of my time at lunches and dinners with different, channel partners, prospects, etc.
Yeah, there you go.
I wanted to ask you, actually, I was thinking this thing today morning. There's a few vendors that I saw that I hadn't heard of.
Really?
Are they vendors that are popping up in your eyes, or have you heard of most of them?
No, so I haven't heard of most of them. There are some new ones there, but I do know, and I haven't been to the Expo 4 yet. And so I'm literally going to go do that today because I want to go see like who's out there. Because I need to update the Identity 50, right? So I got to go see like who would I need to add to the list, right? I got to do the updates for the mergers and acquisitions. So, but I did hear that they're doing a new kind of RSA style like innovation alley kind of thing, right? So that's new for Identiverse. So I definitely want to go check that out.
I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah, but there are a lot of. So I will say anecdotally, I do feel like there are a lot more companies. I was just talking about this earlier. This space has been ripe for disruption for so long, but I'm like, I think the last 2 years, I dare say it's been an explosion of companies that come in. Like it's really competitive now, right? Like before, you talk to identity companies, it's 3, maybe 4 names at most. That was it. And it's been like that for the past like 8 years. Now, I mean, I think you can rattle off 10 just off the top of your head. There's probably another 10 that you kind of know about. And I think there's like 5 or 7 that like
stealthy.
Yeah, stealthy. Like only like people are coming into this space in droves, and I love it. Right, I love the competition. I love to see the innovation. I love to see new things coming. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to just kind of get around the expo, see who's doing what, talk to customers, see what they think of it, things like that or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the sense I got, right? Because at RSA, there was also, maybe not this year, maybe a year before, the year before that, I actually have the backpack that says the human factor or the identity factor of security, right? It might have been a few years ago. And I almost feel like now security people are waking up to the fact that you can take the security approach and say, identity is part of what we do.
Right.
Or you can turn around and say, well, identity people know a lot more than we do about a whole bunch of things that we need to understand before we overlay our security hacker mindset or kind of preventative handset, right? So I like that. I agree with you. I think there's a lot of funding coming in. I also think from my learnings, it's been like each one of the verticals, if you think of the verticals the way you and I probably do, I'm sure other people think of it differently. Identity governance as a vertical getting kind of disrupted.
Yeah.
Then you've got digital identity and biometric and kind of new ways to authenticate without friction. And then, you've probably seen it this year, there's a big buzz around non-human identities.
Yeah.
And a ton of money flowing into that space, right? And there was probably one vendor that I remember back in was it Venafi?
Venafi.
Yeah, Venafi. I can't think.
Now CyberArk.
Yeah, but there might have been maybe one more, maybe in Europe that you might have mentioned to me a while ago. But I didn't. I know there's a risk factor, and I think it's a hot space because there's not enough investment on the identity side, and the cybersecurity people think of it as in a very siloed way, right? How they think about things.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think non-human to me was PAM before. It's what PAM was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Is this area of we know hey, we know we need to manage this.
Yeah.
It's a lot. We don't really know how to map it. We just kind of sweep it under the rug, right? And so they were in companies and organizations were still just understanding privilege access. They're still struggling with IGA. So it was this thing that they knew that was there, but it's like, if I don't pay attention to it, right, it doesn't really exist type thing.
Right.
And so now I like to see this, I think with the proliferation of APIs and how we do interactions between different applications and these long-lasting tokens, things like that, you start to realize how much this proliferates because as soon as you start combining data from different SaaS applications, it's a new API key, you're doing all these different things, and so how quickly this gets out of hand, and of course, unfortunately, everything comes back to breaches. When you start to break down some of these, it's like, how are they getting in? It's like, oh, they took access to this API token, this API endpoint, and why did it have all this access, and what's going on? And so, and as we all know, especially in this world, in the VC world, once somebody gets funded and they start to make traction, then it's over. There's blood in the water. Yeah. Sharks are coming. Everybody's going to. So it's been fascinating to watch. I didn't hear anything about it. The closest I heard about it was Traceable, and Traceable's not even really non-human, but they're more API management and tracking over there. And then it was Asterisk Security, and then I can't remember
There's one more, right?
There's one more that I heard of that's coming up. That's literally basically trying to copycat Asterisk.
I think Ballistic invested in them. They're based in DC. I forgot the name too. I don't know who came first because a lot of these guys, and I met the company we're talking about, the name will come to me. I met the founder at the Ballistic event in Austin, and they'd been kind of tinkering and building for a while.
Yeah.
I just didn't know who they were.
Right.
And I think you know how it is with startups. They change their focus. They,
Yep.
They find a hot spot, they go after it. But I also feel like marketing sometimes messes this up a little bit, where you'll hear people say they do non-human identities. Even before CyberArk bought Venafi, even if you go to the SailPoint website, they have a section on non-human identity management governance, right? But is it truly end-to-end, or is it just a component of it? Everyone's doing a piece of the puzzle, and I think it's good that Asterisk and these other companies are getting funded because they will make the problem the only problem that they solve, not one of 10 problems.
Exactly, and it will help them define the problem,
yes,
right, and kind of fill out the scope. Because honestly, I think before this, a lot of it, when people would think non-human, you think, oh, service account management. It's that's part of it, right? But it's your service account and your API tokens and your workloads, right, that are managing that has access. So it's literally anything that's non-human that has access, you need to manage, right? And I think that's...
And that non-human definition, like you said, for me as well, was very limited in my thinking.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that go as part of that, especially in cloud infrastructures where you're assuming roles, you're assuming token control, you're assuming access, right, as a privilege, as a member of a group that, is kind of, not managed.
It's fascinating. Watching the depth that's there and the things that you have to control and manage, I know that the struggle these companies are going to find is that it's a lot to throw at, an identity director or a CISO, because they're just like, I got all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me I've got all this other stuff I've got to manage. And it's like, oh, I need a governance protocol for that. And I need workflows for that. And who's going to approve it? Like, it's adding on to that. And so one of the things that I'm interested to see is whether or not like this new non-human wave, like if they actually make it, or if they just get consumed once again, like by one of these other ones grabbing the platform, right? Like, so we're seeing CyberArk grab them, and if we see other PAM tools go, okay, we're just going to grab that because it's close enough to us, or IGA tools reach out and get one, because if I go out and find, here's all the non-human things I found, here's their access, here's their link to, then I need an approval process. I need a request process. I need a SOD process. And I'm like, are you going to go build all that? No. Like, you would want that in a governance tool, right? Yeah. Are you going to go build that and then sell it to a customer and go, hey, we'll do all this for you, but you got to do all this governance stuff somewhere else? Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see if, like, they just kind of build just enough of a market and then just see them getting, like, taken out. Like, this whole platform strategy now is going to be interesting. Right, to see how it affects like the rest of the companies and as they come to market.
Yeah, I think what you and I should do when we walk on the expo floor is when we see someone that says machine identity, we should say, well, what do you do about humans that become machines? Right? The transformers, the human who can control a machine.
Right.
Identity, not the machine itself. To use the machine identity to control the machine, right? I think I think people are coming at it from different angles. I think you're right that there's going to be acquisitions where people say, this will fill a gap where I don't offer a certain piece of it. But what pains me, and I think you know this, is that when these companies get bought, it becomes less about making the customer happy. It becomes more about how many more widgets can we sell, and then burn that. And then by that time, the rocket scientists behind it who had a strategy and a roadmap are like, listen, you're not investing enough in R&D, right?
Right.
And maybe it's good for capitalism as a whole and the fact that we need new blood to come into the startup ecosystem. But I'd love to see big companies continue to innovate and disrupt themselves.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic, man. I remember when I was younger, I was a young engineer, and I can't remember if it was a blog or like a book I read, like, how to build like a culture of innovation, right? And I always think, man, that's bullshit. Like, you don't need to do it through all this culture innovate. You just innovate, right? And as I got older and got access to like different parts of a business and organization, see how it works, it's like, no, you truly do need to like build a culture around innovation. Like, it's a thought process and how you approach things, right? And I think what happens is as companies get bigger, they fall into, we need process, we need these things, right? We got to meet customer demands, and you forget that edge or that thought process of how to innovate. It truly takes a concentrated effort to bring that back in, right?
We can't just say R&D happens on the side and there's 5% of our budget goes towards R&D, right? In fact, everyone in the company should be thinking about how are we going to make things better, faster, cheaper for the customer and be really customer obsessed.
Yeah, no, they absolutely should be. And I think that's why, competition is always good because it drives all factors of it, right? The smaller startups are going to fight against each other. So it's like, I have a feature, then like, right, and I'm seeing it right now, right? I'll be nice to not name names of the companies, but it's like one company lists a feature, and I swear, like 2 months later, they got this feature. Like, it is just, you just watch it, and they're going tit for tat, like back and forth, and then that bubbles up to the bigger companies because they're gonna when they're gonna get in, and even if they beat those companies 70% of the time, but they're still hearing about, well, this company really did this better, and it's like, okay, at some point they're gonna get tired of hearing that and go, how do we go figure that? And so it drives everybody to start, competing for those features, figuring it out. But I think the difference maker that to me is more challenging if you're a vendor and exciting if you're the customer is truly the ability to deliver that feature so much faster, right? Like, if I look at this and go, okay, here's a feature I want to be able to go do. And this is why I truly hope that these vendors start to do some research and spend some investments into building like true LLM models around what's there. Because it's like now you can go, I can take this data, all this identity that you have, and you say, hey, I want to see it this way, I want this type of feature, I want you to go do this thing. And it's like, okay, between what I'm running on my LLM models and what I can probably even work that into my development standpoint, not only can I increase my development time, like let's say small company, I got 10 engineers, right? And you're using some of the AI tools, Copilot, stuff like that. I'm not saying they're all great. I think people are overestimating what some of the AI stuff can do, but they're also underplaying what it can do in the hands of somebody like who really knows what they're doing. Like if you give a senior engineer Copilot, right? Generate me this. The senior engineer she's not dumb enough to go, I'm just going to take this, copy and paste it. No, she's been doing it forever. She's going to look at it, take a critical eye and go, okay, I got 80% of it done for me, so cool. I'll take that 80% and I'll go do this or whatever. Like if I just increase her output by 20%, right? And I do that across the board. If I've got 10 engineers and I just increased all of their input by 20%, plus I've got it baked into my product. I've got LLM AI into my product where I can do advanced analytics around data, pull different use cases and things in front of the customer. Like what you're going to be able to see is like, okay, customer, you want this? No problem. We can now deliver this feature to you. You'll have it by next month, right? Instead of we'll put that on roadmap in 6 months. Like there is a movement going about how we develop and use this that I think that's going to be like the kind of hidden accelerator over the next 2 years that I like some of these younger companies are really going to have this advantage to be able to be in front of that to go, hey, we may lose a deal, right? And this is what I would do if I'm any startup and it's like, and if you're pushing this and you're able to move with your engineering this fast, like, hey, we may lose a deal, and go, hey, we lost a deal. And that's what I would tell my salespeople to tell them. No problem. Okay, can we do this? Like, don't have to tell me who you went with, but if you can just tell me like what the features are, why we lost, and I want to check back with you in 45 days, right? Just to give you an update. Keep your decision, go what you want, and then go, hey, yeah, you didn't quite have this, and then check back in 45 days. Hey, just want to let you know, thanks for that feedback. Here's what we added. Yeah. Right? Like that type of motion, I think is going to be really viable over the next year.
No, I want to say that I'm 100% aligned with what you said. I was thinking of something you started with around looking at competitors, right? And I've made this mistake as a first-time founder, right? Spending too much time looking at your competitors and worrying about who's copying your website, copying your capabilities. At the end of the day, it's all about delivery and execution. And to your point, 9 out of 10 deals you lose. Even the one deal that you think you got, they might just POC it and say no. But the data, the prompts that they put in there, the questions that they ask, all are important for you to learn about how customers interact with your tool, right, is one. The second is, I think, and again, startup founders make this mistake, is trying to be perfect. And as you mentioned very rightly, I was on a prospect call last week where the individual was asking me, he's like, well, why do you choose GPT-4 and not Llama or some other new one from another company, Anthropic or whatever? And I just said, it's portable. I mean, let's start here. Let's see what is not being met, and then we'll talk about the next step, right? And then he proceeded to go into graph neural networks and what about this and what about that. And I said, look, the world is dynamic. It's changing very quick, right? I love what you said, can I make you 20% more productive? And if it's not AI, and if it's some analytics or heuristics or, Jira, let's look at Jira, right? When I typically run a filter to look at what my tickets are, it will recommend which person it's assigned to, because that's what I usually look at. It just knows what I use in Jira again and again. That's heuristics. That also can save a few minutes of time. Yeah. I'm not trying to knock on any one of the existing IAM, IGA vendors, but they don't even do that. Right? You look at consumerization. I mean, you and I are used to using products that are easy, like Apple. Why is Apple booming in terms of sales of their machines, right? It's because it's just easy and intuitive, right? So we at work also want things that are easy and intuitive. We don't want to be running TPS reports, right? Right? All day long. We don't want to be, where's my stapler? Is it missing? Right? I'm going into office space. But we want to do productive stuff and feel like we're valued, and then we build skills. And my fear is that, with all the layoffs that are happening, it's kind of unfortunate across the globe, not just in the US, is that people are getting laid off, and when they're trying to explain what they've been doing, a lot of them have been pigeonholed and not been given opportunities to learn the latest technologies and the products. And it's not, I don't blame just the companies, I also blame the people to say, don't treat any job as forever. Learn the latest stuff. There's free stuff on there, right? You and I can go learn stuff on LinkedIn learning, right? So we have to be on top of it. And once we get familiar, the next job we want, you and I, if we're looking for our next job, we're not going to want a job that they don't give us the tools to be able to make us productive and efficient and effective. We'll all become prompt engineers at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
You know it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's so clear that that's where it's going, right? And that it's, you know what? Prompt engineering, I think I'm trying to remember how long it took Google to become a thing, right? So for those of us old enough to remember, right? Before there was a Google, right? It was like, okay, I got to go search the internet. And then, like, as Google started becoming more and more popular, like, Google itself became the verb. Like, hey, just go Google it, right? And it wasn't about going to Google. It's like, this is how you go search the web to go find things, right? And it's prompt engineering is having that same, to me, trajectory of, like, this is literally how I interact with software, and I'm expecting it to do things. I don't want to just search anymore. Now I want to be able to give something a prompt and say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do, go do this or whatever, right? Just how people got really, really good at doing Google searches and advanced searches. Like, that's what prompting is, and it's like the more, especially the generations behind us, kind of get used to interacting with that, it's going to be an expectation of the products to work that way. And I know, like, B2B has always been slowly behind, and I don't know why, right? It's one of the things that kind of always drove me crazy, but I think I would hope that with this is a chance for B2B to get ahead and just go, hey, what if we just inject this now? And, you know, we know people are using it. They're using prompt engineering. They're using ChatGPT, Claude, Anthropo. I mean, the AI tools are everywhere, right? So it's known that you have to go and develop a prompt. So put that into more software. We're seeing Microsoft with their Copilot stuff and all the things that they're doing. I could probably see in the next 10 years where the expectation is I go into any product and I'm expecting some kind of prompt to be there, and I tell it, like, here's what I'm looking to do. Not just a search, not just a filter command, like an actual, like, hey, generate me a port that does this and pull data from here. I want it, you know what I mean? I want it formatted in this row in a table block, go, right?
Yeah.
And it just does it.
Yeah. Instead of hiring an army of interns to kind of figure it out no, I agree with you. And I was thinking about what you said about B2B, right? So there were a few companies after Google that tried to get into what they called enterprise search.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that went. I don't know if Google got a stranglehold on it or became the engine that drove the search of Salesforce. I don't know enough about it, so I can't speak to it. But I think human beings, again, I'm getting philosophical here. We try to overcomplicate some of the things we do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, fancy terms for just being able to ask intelligent questions and expect intelligent responses. Right? I think we have to stop making it seem like there's a bar to be able to consume and use these products. We have to start looking at B2B as business to consumer within the business.
Yeah.
Right? The person within the business is a consumer of information, a consumer of your product. And I think the reason why it won't happen, maybe even in our lifetime, is because the fear of disruption, right? Big companies want to get sticky. They want to get, like, even Amazon, I don't think they've completely got off of Oracle yet. They kept saying they were going to kill Oracle internally. I think they still have a little bit of Oracle running somewhere. I don't know where. But that's the truth, right? The stickiness, let me teach you how to click on the 7 different places. And the fear I have of that mindset is that somebody new is going to come in, a new CIO, a new CISO, whether it's breach related or otherwise, going to say, this is crap. And I'm going to bring something in that I'm going to deploy in 30 to 60, 90 days. And it's going to it's going to learn your data set and your data sets, disparate data sets. And your consumer internally within the business can write a simple natural language question, and they're going to get, like you said, a formatted spreadsheet or an output or a risk, right? And the day that happens, and it's going to happen because if it doesn't happen because you and I become those leaders, but the next generation that becomes those leaders is going to say, you know, Oracle's my dad's company. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
It definitely is. And I think it's, you know, we saw it with iPhones, right? With this, I would say, like, this kind of last generation, that as iPhone got better and better with their user interface, then we had a generation that grew up with iPhones and iPads, and so that was their whole interaction with a computing device, right? And then iPhone became the term for a computer like anything else, right? It's like, oh, I will never forget this. My niece, she was about, I don't know, mid-20s, and I didn't realize until that point, she had never used a laptop or an actual computer. She only ever used an iPhone. So I had a Mac desktop, and she was, you know, visiting, and she needed to do some work. I said, all right, just, you know, go use the computer. And she was like, how do I work this? I was like, what are you talking about? It's a computer. You just click on what you want. And then she was going around. She goes, oh, it's like an iPhone. Like, in her mind, like, she was like, so it's just a giant iPhone. And then everything's set into place for her. She goes, oh, okay, I do this. And I'm just like, and that whole concept to me I found fascinating. And I'm like, okay, so her entire aspect of interacting with a computer is from an iPhone. So kind of going back to the prompt where I'm going with that is like, we're going to have an entire generation that comes up and like, the only way they know how to interact with software is prompting. So if they then go to work and it doesn't work that way, they're going to be like, what, to your point, like, what is this?
What is this? Yeah.
Like, why is this? I don't understand why it doesn't work like this. And I think, I mean, Moore's Law, right? Everything, like...
Moore's Law, yeah.
I would assume that it's going to happen faster than it took us to, like, you know, go from iPhones, or even like when GUIs first came out. Now I'm really dating myself, and everyone's like, command line's going to go away. No, command line will never go away. Yes, it did. Right? Yeah. I mean, it's not completely away, but there's the ones, for those of us who know.
1%.
Yeah. But I think this is going to take that same.
I'm just seeing it. You're seeing it too with the. I mean, I'm laughing at the cost of the Apple headset, Pro, right? But people who use it, they're still getting headaches, and it's not perfect yet. But they can do some things pretty fast, right? I mean, I'm getting very used to talking to Alexa. Or when I was walking over here, trying to get directions, I just spoke to Siri on my phone instead of kind of looking up the map, right? So it's going to get to the point where it's going to have to hit the businesses as well, right? Yeah. Because the businesses will look at IT and security, they always will, as a cost center, right? Yeah. Now, you made a very, very interesting point earlier, and it just brought me back to my old days at Amazon, and I know you were at Amazon as well, where IT for Amazon is really, it's really even the people in IT were engineers, right? So they would get two pizza teams together and build out IGA, or they'll build out their own version of authentication for internal systems. They'll build out their own HRIS systems. And I don't know if that applies to all the companies in the world, but I do think, to your point, going back to time at Whole Foods within Amazon, is that, you know, my CTO at the time was trying to do something very similar, is to look at it as how do we, you know, collapse our complex infrastructures? How do we break out these silos of data sharing, right? But unfortunately, to your point, it takes a breach for that to happen. I'm not saying Whole Foods had a breach. We did, but it was Home Depot. I saw a lot of engineers going there. Target, I saw a lot of engineers going there to build stuff. Not just go out and say, let me select the top 5 tools and buy it, right? No. How do I make them work well together? How do we break down silos between security and identity and engineering, all of them, right? But I think with LLMs and what I'm hearing at these conferences is the startups are thinking, okay, what's my minimum viable product to get in the door with LLMs or intelligence or AI? And they're thinking, okay, can you ask me 50 questions and I'll just script those questions and give you really good answers, right? There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that, you know, kind of keep it in a box. So, because, you know, if you open up the Pandora's box, you're going to get hallucination and errors and all that stuff. And it's a catch-22, right? Because at the end of the day, the whole idea of being able to retrieve, augment, generate data, you know, and give you intelligent answers is that you actually don't have silos.
Right. Exactly.
Right? So if I go and say my buyer is identity architect, right? And he's just going to ask these sets of questions, right? But an identity architect is going to be asked a different question from an auditor. An identity architect is going to be asked security questions when he has to build or update his or her module, right? And so, unfortunately, you know, with our bias for action, we've got X million in the bank. I'm talking any startup, right? Right. Just give me what's going to make you happy to give me that $10,000, $15,000, and then they go into POC, and then it just falls apart, right? And so what I think is happening is one of two things. One is companies are either raising a ton of money, you've seen it, right? Yeah. Huge Series A's, huge seed rounds, and saying, well, we're going to go in and we're going to actually just put our heads down and build for 3 years. That's why when you brought up Asterix, the other company, I remember them telling me they'd been building for a while, and I was like, yeah, I never heard of you, that's great. I think that's one part of it. The other part of it is, how do I either go broad with my use case with the kind of the 5 or 7 people, just in identity, not security, let's keep security out or compliance out, the 5 or 7 people that I can make them 20% better. And those are the smart ones, I think. Because, you know, money's not endless, right? You can keep building and building. You have to kind of get out of stealth and talk about it. I like what you said, which is, if you can come back and say, I can, you know, what's the word? I can feasibly, or, you know, I can justifiably make you 20% better. I can quantifiably make you, that's the word, 20% better, and I can prove that I can make all these processes faster for this group. Let's just call it the identity group, right? Like I said, you know, that team. You might have a winning use case to start with, and then people will throw at you hundreds of questions they want to ask. In fact, some of those questions are just not feasible unless you've got access to the world's data set.
Right.
I mean, if you sit here and tell me everything that's wrong with AWS controls, I can't do that, right?
Right.
But I can learn and get better through my intuition and experiences.
And I think that's the direction that we have to realize how we have to take with AI and wherever we're going with it is like, it's not meant to, like everybody complains about the hallucinations, all that stuff, whatever. It's not meant to it's not meant to solve it for you. It's meant to help you solve it, right? The whole point of it is to do the things that you do inefficiently, you have that do. And it's got to be a combination. You should be working with it, not like, oh, let me go have this do it. Okay, it did it, great, and I'm going to go use it. No, it's like, hey, do this for me. What did you come up with, right? It's like having an intern or like, teaching a mentee, like, go do this for me. Okay, now let me correct it. This isn't quite right. This isn't quite right, right? Why do you need to do that? Because the only way it gets better is like when you correct and go, okay, no, this is the right one. Yeah. Now you give it that feedback. And then what happens? It gets better over time. Now you can move on to more things. Okay, you can handle this task now. Let me go to the next task, right? And I think that the reason why I think that's so important, because that approach, when you know that that's the approach that you want to have from a user perspective, you build your user interface around it. You build your product around it to where it's like, what I want from you, user, is a constant feedback, not a, you plug in here, it does all this magic for you, and your job is done. It's like, no, this is going to make, again, I'm just trying to make you 20% better, 20% faster. Right. The mundane task of like, any developer would know, especially a Java developer, hey, I need to set up a new class. I got to import these packages. What I want to do, I got to set my my functions, my getters, my setters, whatever, right? And we've seen this in IDEs for a long time. It's like, okay, we'll just shortcuts generate. But now, if I could just say, all right, I want a new class. Here's my two classes. Here's the inheritance structure. Here's the variables. Here's the settings. Boom. And it's like, okay, all that's outputted and done. I overlook it. That's done. Great. Now let me go figure out the integration pattern I need to go create. Do all that stuff for and set it up, and then let me look at it and go, yeah, that's the right way. Now do this thing. Yeah, that's the right way. Now it's this thing. Now I'm not coding. What are you doing? You're designing.
You're designing.
Right? And so now I spend less time actually coding and I'm architecting. I'm designing. That's what I want you to do. I don't care. You've spent 10, 15 years coding. I know you can code. So if I can find something that can code for you, I didn't devalue you. Now it's like, I want to get the more valuable time. So if you spend 8 hours of your day, 6 hours of it coding and 2 hours of it designing, if I can flip that, how much more are you going to be able to do? Developer, how much happier are you? Because you're you're able to think and be creative and put things together, right? All that to say, it's like, that's the way I think we should kind of be building these tools to then present to our users and go, here's how we're going to make this so much better for you. When bring that back to identity, like, say you do that for an IGA product and you go to a customer and say, okay, right now I do everything manually. It's too, okay, here's how I can totally make this process 80% more efficient. And we're going to set all this up for you. Ready? Here you go. Boom. Tell me the applications you use. Tell me like what the access is. Tell me how you do your certifications. All right, boom, it's set up for you. Does this look good? Great, go run with it. Now you're done, right? Yeah. So now when audit comes around, you're not spending 3 weeks trying to collect. Nope, data's already been collected for me. It's done. Now I can go figure out what the next thing is, right? It's moving into that kind of feedback model of give them something, let them ask the questions, interact with it, build what they need, go off and start running, come back and fix it, right? Yeah. Right? Work your AI into it to where it's telling it like it's getting that constant feedback loop, so it's getting better and better and better. So I tell you, customer day 60, we've set everything up and it's running. Day 300, it's going to be even better the next time you run it because it's been learning from you the whole time. But not like I had to just, it's going to sit and learn and it can't do anything. No, it's been learning while you've been actually getting stuff done. Right. Have you noticed you've been getting faster and faster with your reviews, right?
I agree.
So, all right, I'm off my soapbox.
No, you're. I just want to finish with the last part of what you mentioned, bringing it back to identity, right? So going back to my customer conversations, one of them was around how SailPoint has been using AI or machine learning in the past, even before the LLMs, right? And so yes, SailPoint has done a good job. Let's give credit where credit's due around using data science or ML to do role mining.
Right.
Now, if you think about the job of an identity engineer or a identity architect, role mining is something they do not every day. You know what I mean? Right. So it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think when you talk about consumerizing and getting more data points, it's about thinking of, is my friction with the auditors, to your point? Do the auditors need to ask questions of my data so they can get their reports and leave me the heck alone? Is it around creating a new campaign in IGA? is it about requesting access and saying, what access should I request that doesn't require 2 levels of approval?
Right.
Or what access should I request that I'm permitted to request, right? Or, you're asking, multi-tiered questions, and access requests, people going on leave, people getting terminated, people having life events, these are daily use cases in a large company. Role mining is not. So while I appreciate that SailPoint started early, I think the opportunity, and I'm sure Okta is doing things and all the big companies are doing things around this, I think the real opportunity is to say, how do we take the burden off your plate that you know that you don't want to create 3 tickets in Jira to follow up, to get approvals? Like, how do you just, and how does the person who has to consume some of the requests say, oh, I got all these requests. Please approve all requests that are standard. And send me a list of all the non-standard requests for approval tiered by privileged access requests or level of privilege, right? So it's almost like I'm using some level of intelligence to do my requesting. I'm using some level of intelligence to prioritize my work. And I'm using some level of intelligence to take things off my plate and then get the others done manually, potentially, right?
Right.
And that's the 20%, right? That I really want to put my head into, right? And really focus on. And so that's the part I think sometimes companies, and it's not companies, it's human beings, right? I will go and say, I just need to get approval from a CISO. The CISO is the one writing my check. So he said I need to do these 5 things, I did it, so I'm going to get my check.
Right.
But the truth is, at the end of the day, you will just become another tool, another cog in the wheel that people say, well, when the 3 years are up, because it's easy to switch, it's not as hard as it used to be, I'm going to go and actually buy a product that solves this problem holistically for the different consumers.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Well, it's a good thing I'm not a vendor. I don't have to worry about it. So. All right, man. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to go walk the expo floor.
Yeah, let's do it. We should. And I think the next episode we should say lessons learned from walking the floor.
We should, yeah. All right, everybody, look, that's a wrap here for this episode for the Identity Jedi Show, live from Vegas, Identiverse 2024. Make sure to like, rate, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, thank you very much. Leave a comment. You guys know what it is. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other. See you guys next time.